87% can do this in one generation. I was one that did it. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, so a little more of my backstory. What got me so motivated is still like, my life's work might be like Bob Proctor was a great mentor to me. I'll do this till the day I walk off the planet. I just got back from Georgia Southern. I was teaching the Georgia Southern football whole team and coach staff as a pro bono. My son plays there. Just financial literacy is critical. We're not taught it. I think the school system has a little bit of a job to do from the basics. But we as families and parents, if we really want generational wealth, which Linda, I'm glad that you really emphasized that, generational wealth comes with a lot of strategy and planning at the family level. That's not something your school's going to do. Your schools aren't going to talk to your kids. That's the parents' job and really the grandparents' job. So growing up in Nebraska, I didn't grow up with any of those conversations. And a lot of folks who grew up in the, I say, Gen X or kind of the baby boomer era, generational wealth wasn't really talked about at all. And usually what generational wealth looks like is the surprise basket at the end where mom and dad, or when, the estate passes, everybody's sitting around a table, the will's being read, and then the kids begin to fight. So, and I've just seen massive family breakups. So here in Northern Nevada, we have 3 billionaire families that are breaking up, and it's the third generation. So normally, and that's exactly the statistic, 2.3 years is typically when generational wealth falls apart because the entities weren't done right. There was no financial family plan that the kids would have to learn. I have a lot of people buying the books. I was sharing that with you, Linda, that are older who are passing. They're like, it doesn't matter that the book is written from 0 to 18. The book is for anybody who's really wasn't taught or didn't have a chance to do it. So mine is really an experiment that I did from being a single mom in 1999 when I had my son. And till just recently, I was just with him. I just got back from Georgia Southern yesterday. He's 22 right now and on his way to have a finance and accounting degree. And we'll still say today is not taught anything I'm about to share with you on these next 3 slides. Because again, these are very financial literate, what the wealthy do. This isn't what you do to stay stable and get out of debt. That's Susie Orman and Dave Ramsey's conversation. Mine's what do you do once you're stable and you're on your way to really protect the wealth that you have. And then to really, how do you set up a generational plan that's going to last more than 2.3 years? Because 2.3 would mean that your grandkids are going to blow it. So that's how I really want the message loud, especially led to the C-suite group, because they're also busy running companies. And typically what I call park and praying, putting their money with one financial advisor and not really diversifying properly. So there's a lot I have to teach about the adults about it. But I want to just show you a few slides just so we're in the same conversation of where the problem really originates. So when I got the book Think and Grow Rich, I was 17 years old. And that was my inspiration and passion. I got it from Dennis Waitley. I was at a conference. I was one of those, loud conference goers. I ran to the front of the room and I got the book and I read it. And you can imagine farm girl from Nebraska reading Think and Grow Rich going, oh my gosh, like people think like this. Like there's actually a world where people behave like this. Well, it's, up until I think now, and I think Rich Dad Poor Dad was the big opening of it with Robert and Sharon. And then, I worked with their team 1996 to 2000. I was the cash flow distributor of their game. I had the master distributor license. And so just watching how few people take this seriously, and I'm on, broadcasts all the time saying, when are you going to take learning about money, which is every day in and out of your life from the minute you're on the planet to the minute you walk out? When are you going to take this seriously about learning about money and then putting it in your family? So, and I think the C-suite folks, this is critical, this generational wealth conversation we're having. So there's not a lot on, we'll just repost out to our LinkedIns, and my LinkedIn is Loral Langemeier. It's just such an important conversation. And here's the problem. I created the word wealth cycle because I wanted to have a word that could describe the pattern of money that people get trapped in. So if you notice, instead of going vertical, I put the P&L, right, your income and expenses horizontally. And then your income minus expenses is your cash flow. For those of you who don't know that, assets minus liability, which is everything you own, everything you owe, is your net worth. And so when I say we're making millionaires and promise my 3 to 5 year millionaire, I'm talking to 3 to 5 year net worth, not getting your business to $1 million. That's easy. Like, especially for C-suite folks, I assume for the most part, a lot of them have already hit that $1 million mark. And if not, can help you do that too. But that the net worth millionaire is what we're talking about. So Steve, if you just put up the lifestyle cycle, here's the pattern that I'm going to say 90+% are trapped in, and we're all being marketed to this way. So first of all, we're taught that the only way to make money is a job. And we're not taught entrepreneurialism. And even the entrepreneurial curriculum I've watched my son go through is taught by tenured professors who maybe own one company or one piece of real estate. I've done over 1,000 real estate transactions. I've owned many, dozens of companies. A lot of them I did in my kids' era, where I flipped, a laundromat. I flipped a pizzeria. I mean, those are fun kids' businesses. To have your kids, and I do a lot of real estate with my kids, and I have a marijuana license here in Nevada. My son's been on a marijuana grow. I mean, he knows what he's in for. So he's going to become a CPA. He's like, I think I'm gonna have to manage our taxes to hold generational wealth. I said, you are. It's the biggest part of this. But here's the problem, is that's not what we're taught. We're taught that, thank you, the liability, right? You start gaining liabilities in your late teens, early 20s for sure. I landed out, my biggest liability was student loan debt when I got my master's degree. And I had over 6 figures because I went to a private university. And so that was exciting to know that I had a monthly payment of an expense. And then you get a car, and then, whether you take on a house and a mortgage. And so all of a sudden these liabilities, become your biggest concern. And can you afford a monthly payment? And notice how everybody markets to you. The first thing to come in, if you have a mortgage or a car, if you go into a utility store, and why not buy some new appliances, or not a utility store, but just to go get anything. How much can you afford on your monthly payment? That's how we're marketed to, because that's society. I think it's disgusting, right, frankly, but it's true. And this is how people live. They spend more time worried about can they afford something and can they pay their bills versus go and put it, what I call the wealth cycle. So I generated this, and a lot of this was Sharon inspired, Sharon Lechter inspired. And so Steve, go ahead and put up the wealth cycle. So I'm going to show you how to make a lot of different money. That's really what my kind of wheelhouse is. And then the pattern, if you notice, goes immediately into new assets, and then invested properly will come back into new passive income. So you have active income to passive income in that cycle, but no one's really given that a name. I will live for that principle. That's what's going to create you a millionaire faster. And when your kids know that everything that you make, you put some away, you make it, you put some away, which is really the pay your first self. See, I wouldn't say pay yourself first. I say buy assets, call it the right word. Because pay yourself first feels like it's a pay yourself first, you can go out and buy more stuff. No, I want you to buy real estate. I want you to buy businesses in your town or invest in, proper deals. Randy Tate, who's I know part of C-Suite, is a partner of mine at iFlip, heavily involved in that software with he and Kelly Korshak. Which, by the way, we just won a huge NASDAQ award a couple of weeks ago, beating Robinhood. Yay. Because we're just so much better. So the pattern that we're taught is make, spend, and worry about your debt. The pattern I'm going to recreate with you and your families and your kids who are my, I shouldn't say they're my favorite. You're my favorite. I love teaching adults. You have to learn how to teach kids. So I'm going to be like your coach, your parent coach on how to bring financial literacy in the conversation into your household and get your kids reorganized around that. Even if they're in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, I have a lot of people that are later in life buying the book, Make Your Kids Millionaires, because it is age specific. And my question to them is, why would you hand financially literate, maybe executive smart, but not financially and investment and tax literate, which all that is in my mind is financial literacy, a lot of millions of dollars. So let's go to the next slide. I'm going to kind of just go through this quickly because I think there's a lot of really more, I'm going to say a little more advanced and smart people out here. Here's what we're taught. So go ahead and put that up. See, we're taught to live employee life, I called it. And I think this slide is just definitively clear when I go through it quickly. So employee life, and this is not just in America. Randy and I actually traveled to six of the 7 continents. We've taught everywhere but Antarctica. From 2007 till March 7, 2022 took me home. Otherwise, we would have been on that run. We had huge offices in Australia, had offices in the UK, South Africa, all over the world. I'm married to a Canadian, so I know Canadian tax and finance and law very well. But here's the problem. These are American statistics. If you make 80,000 or more, you're in the top 25%. I know C-suite people make more than that. And I guarantee if you'd ask most of them, Melinda, what would you say to that? With most of them, that anybody who makes that, even in the low hundreds, I wouldn't think they would know that they're in the top 25% of income earners.
No, I think you're right on that, Loral. And I will say that Robert asked a question about context also, which I think I'd love to hear your opinion on. He said, why is it that there are some folks that believe that generational wealth is actually advantageous? He said, why would I want to give my kids the gift of financial freedom versus a tool set to do it on their own? So do you have a thought about either giving them a fish or giving them the knowledge to go fishing?
The whole book is teaching them to go fishing. So this is not handing it to them. This is not handing it to them. Let's be honest between us, folks here. The book title sexy, right? The book title sexy, and it goes in my Millionaire series. But my kids on paper, because of entities and trusts and the way that we organize that. But oh no, my kids were entrepreneurs. They started their first businesses at 4 years old. So we're giving them tools to be very entrepreneurial, how to use debit cards properly, how to use credit cards. So I'll go through the exact. So I love that question, Robert. I appreciate that. Sure. And I will go through the specifics of what we do in the book in just a moment. Okay. So I love that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, it's so important. And so, yeah, I mean, if we were going to put it like just financially literate, really what the book, I believe, it's a parent's guide, right? I mean, our subtitle is right. It's the parent's guide to teach your kids we call it financial freedom. But really it's financial independence. It's financial literacy. They have to know.
Yeah, it was just the generational wealth that threw me a little bit. So thank you for clarifying.
No, I'm totally, and one of my partners that we're opening up actually over the summer, it'll come out. So I love what's going to happen in 2022, which I don't believe in coincidence, it's just divinely ordered, is this book comes out May 10th to all the bookstores. End of May and June, what's called Gravy Stack. I'm part of an investment of a kids bank that is going to take the principles of the book. And also another gentleman, Chad, who's really big here out in LinkedIn. He wrote a book, Smart Not Spoiled, and very similar concepts of how do you actually start, but you got to start young. You don't start at 18, you start young. So they don't know, I shouldn't say they don't know any better, but it doesn't occur to them, right? It doesn't occur to them to live life any differently. So let me finish this slide. I think it'll provide that context really well. So the challenge was 80,000. I always put that up there because I think it's shocking because it's not a lot of money. 40 to 50% gets taxed. The majority of their investments go into a 401k. They're not, employees typically aren't encouraged to go out and diversify. A lot of times real estate and the stock market are right there, but they're not encouraged to do Shark Tank or, Married to a Canadian, so Dragon Den kind of things and go buy a local laundromat, or like I did, I flipped a local pizzeria. They're not encouraged to buy companies and be a part of their community, which I love having my kids because there's also a huge charity in being part of that community. You see both sides. You see the business side. You see, the community service side. Like my daughter's on a whole community service day today. A lot of people are very miseducated, and there's a huge push in almost every ad on TV is for what I call death insurance, which is term. That doesn't support what we're talking about. Business owners, well, we don't go on vacations. Debt and credit cards are taught as bad. I'm going to tell you they're critical. Retirement is an agricultural word by definition, to put cattle to pasture to die. Not even by definition. If you looked it up, at least where I looked it up at the Webster's, it's now, it's just more of a financial term. And then everybody files taxes in April. So what's interesting, and it came out live today. I did a podcast with Tom Ziegler and Kevin Cook, and they were questioning, kind of like after the Dave Ramsey model, then what happens? And I said, well, the challenge is, it supports how to live a solid corporate or employee life, but not what I'm going to teach you. Because what's next is this. And I wouldn't say what's next. So what we're advocating in the book, so, Robert and those of you listening, go ahead and put up the next piece of the slide, Steve, is this. And this is what's real and the easiest way I talk about the top line is companies make money. You're either S Corp, your C Corp, your LLC, your limited partnership, and your trust. Your companies make money. Individuals get taxed. So do you just go live corporate life, meaning just live through corporate structure? No, because a lot of people in C-suite and a lot of people that are my clients are very needed employees, right? They're nurses, they're doctors, they're teachers, they're firefighters, right? They're people who need, I have a lot of military. I serve a lot of Air Force, And so what they do is they come to me usually because they're making lot more than 80,000, and they're taxed to pieces. They don't know what to do. And we typically, will like give them a lot of choices. They pick. I'm just an educator and an advocate. I don't tell you what to do. I do have an entire financials team, 28 financial folks around me that can set up your companies. They can do your taxes. They can set up your trust, your insurance. So I have it structured that for teams who want to live in the alternatives, because corporate life to most people is alternative. And that's the more I'm teaching this and the more that I'm really being public about this book. It's shocking to some people. Like even the parents of the Georgia Southern men, I met them on Saturday after the spring game. And they're like, I hear my son needs to get an LLC because he's 18. And they said, we don't even have that. So like we've never even been taught. And they're real estate investors, or they're, they own some companies. They own, like one of them has a dog business and has a bunch of like Dobermans. And I said, you don't have them in an LLC? Those Dobermans bite somebody and you have a lot of other assets, you're sued. I mean, it doesn't even, this is so not taught, and it's so inappropriately, it's scattered when it's taught. How about that? It's like, I always tell you, Linda, it's like a Rubik's Cube that's fallen apart and nobody knows how to put it back together in the right order. So you can search these terms out on the internet for all these different things, like how to get an entity, how to do better taxes, but they're not integrated, which is why I changed the branding probably around 2012, 13 to integrated wealth, because it is integrated. You have to put these together. You can't have a whole scatter of a wealth team that's one person's going to do this and one person's going to do that. They need to do it together on behalf of you, your plan, and your family's plan. What do you want to do? And to speak to the trust, just because this audience, I think, would enjoy that, there's what's called the non-depletion trust. And I think, Robert, that's what, I think would speak to you, where the principal cannot be depleted. And so if the kids or the heirs want to take some of the money, they have to write a business plan. They have to apply for a loan. They have to pay it back. They have to give shares to the trust. So they actually have to keep building it as part of a strategy. I mean, it's what the Rockefellers did. And so I've, highly dissected all of this, and then I think put it together in a way that I think this makes common sense. And I think there's a lot of people who don't have it with common sense. So when your company makes money, and even if it's not like a high income company, you still, no matter what, even if you make, let's flip it. Let's say you make 500,000 because you're a CEO of a company and you're super busy. But so your wife and you, or your partner, your kids have an LLC on the side that's doing, a different business. You still have the legal right to take 81,000 pages of tax code. So that means like your phone, your car, there's just the deductions. If you're just an employee, you have no legal right to take those deductions. And then in addition, you can have a solo 401k, which your company, like my C Corp owns my solo. I'm a huge proponent. I'm employed by one of my companies. My kids were employed the minute they were born, and that allows you to get a Roth IRA. So you can imagine from 0 to 20, 6,000 a year per kid. I mean, that's just 120 put away that they can't get till later in life, and all of that grows tax-free, tax deferred. The best, to me right now, the best financial strategy to put in a Roth is the cryptocurrencies and NFTs. I have young 20, I have a 21-year-old that became a millionaire, and a majority of it's in a Roth IRA through trading cryptocurrencies inside the Roth, like genius. Like these kids that I got my hands on when I was they were 13, and their parents came to me, and their parents just kept bringing them to every session, every program, and every education. A lot of those kids have become millionaires from 13 to 21. Another one's 24. Lot of traders, especially in the crypto space right now. Those kids are genius, but they should be trading at least a portion. You can only put 6,000, but a Roth is the right vehicle for that. Life insurance is cash flow. So it allows you later in life to actually pull on cash flow and not actually delete or reduce the death benefit, which passes on to the kids. But then you, as an older adult person, 60s, 70s, 80s, get to live on as much as you want to design into these policies that then go into trust and pass through on the estate tax law. We never go on a vacation. My kids have never gone. That's our joke in our family, is that my kids will probably live their whole life and never get to go on a vacation, because we always are on business trips. There's a complete strategy we have for business tripping around the world, including wine tasting, including safaris, including all sorts of things that we've done all over the world. We've skied all over the world. That's just our family's jam. We love skiing. We live in Lake Tahoe area. So debt and credit cards are critical. Good debt and smart credit card use could redefine a lot of your your entire portfolio. People don't know it. They don't know how to do it because we're just taught debt's bad. There's nothing further from the truth. You ask any wealthy person, and most of you probably out there listening, I mean, if you try to get on a mortgage, I mean, you can accelerate, but why pay off 2, 3, 4% interest when you can invest it at 15, 20, 25, when you can invest for high returns, take the spread, don't pay off cheap money ever. I owned a private plane for a very long time, 2007 to 19. And I had a just under a 2% interest rate. I mean, people said, oh, is it paid off? I said, no, I paid the minimum down, which is a third. So I'd pay $1 million. It's a $3 million aircraft. And I never paid that off. And when I sold it and moved it, you pay off the mortgage. And I mean, why would I spend $2 million to put $3 million of assets in a principal into one? Yeah, I was leasing it, chartering it, and it was a deduction and all of that. But I had $2 million going somewhere else. So I just think so many people don't realize that. And then I don't ever call the word retirement. I just don't like that word. I call it Freedom Day. And I also like, because retirement has association of an older age. And I think you'd be free. I do. I was on Barbara Walters with 4 to 6. I don't remember. It's been a long time ago. But it was really fun. We were on with Millionaire Kids, where one of the parents quit their job to take on an LLC, because at 18, you have to be 18 legally to own an entity. But they took on the kid's idea. So those little pop, the jewelry pop, little pop caps, that then you put jewelry in, put gems in, and all of that. That was one of our Millionaire Kids companies. A lot of the early tech stuff was our kids companies. So it's been fun. And then legally, your company pays tax in September. You start paying in October. So it just changes your entire structure. So you can imagine if you're a high income earner, and I can tell you that like for sure, and again, this isn't advice, it's just knowledge, you're getting taxed to pieces if you don't have an entity and you're invested properly. So a lot of like high income employees use those entities and they invest properly. And usually somebody in the family becomes very active with an active income so they can really accelerate the use of the deduction schedule. And it was interesting that my son chose to be a CPA because he was really resistant his whole life of, I'm not taking over the business, Mom. But now he sees the financial services. And I said, why don't you build the Schwab, the Fidelity, the AIG? Why don't you build that around this? When a client walks in, instead of just saying, hey, I'll take your money and I'll invest it for you, let's start with what your corporate structure is going to be, what your family structure, and do a trust, and then do the insurance. So I said, go round up your mates, man. Like, go get the smartest guys. He just won, I have to say, he just won the Georgia Southern Scholar Male of the Year. So he won 3 of the highest academic awards he could get in college. So I'm super proud of him. I just got back yesterday. Super proud, Mom. But I asked him, I said, so what had you change your mind? He said, this thing right here, it's like understanding the entity and the creativity around, like, for higher net worth. Like, so I say, this is for right now, this would be for, like, I shouldn't say middle and upper. I mean, I got people like straight up starting entities at 18 years old. I gave Logan signed into my entities. He has his own, at 18 years old. My daughter will do the same at 18 years old. And so then we become partners immediately. And so they've already been trained. I'm very, very aggressive. I'll be the first to admit, aggressive to the normal standards. That's my new thing. Somebody gave me a new talk track around that. They said aggressive to the normal standards. But like, why? I think it's irresponsible for parents to give their credit cards and not help their kids apply properly. There's an application process that's really important. You don't do that right once, your credit score will just drop. Those kids don't know that. I teach that impeccably. And even a lot of adults don't know that. And then each corporation can have its own corporate credit. So when people say they can't get money, they can't get capital, they can't get funding, it's because they don't know. It's not because it's not there. It is so available. Maybe your business plan isn't working, maybe your revenues models aren't working, but it's so available. But put into this structure, I mean, it's one of the first things that I look at when I'm offered a deal. And I'm like, I'm friends with several of the sharks on Shark Tank. I'm offered deals. That's the core. I do a lot of that kind of work, looking at businesses and opportunities. First thing I look at is the corporate structure. What's the cap table look like? Like, what does this actually look at? Like, and when somebody says, talk to my lawyer and accountant, I'm out. Because you as the owner need to know this, and you need to be responsible because you're responsible to the investors. Your accountant and lawyer will be there to defend you when you get sued by your investors. Like, you can tell, I'm telling from very personal experience. I know this in and out. Like, I love structure. I know the structure of the strategy, the tax strategy, but that's what my son's answer was, the creativity of it, and living it. He said, like, I remember in kindergarten, he came home one day. We had just done a big business trip with a real estate team, and I was teaching out there, and we flew home and went back to kindergarten. His classmates were, "How was your vacation in Hawaii?" He comes home, he puts his little hands on his hips. He said, "Ma, what's a vacation? I was teased all day. What is that? Is that bad?" I just laughed. I said, "Honey, we went on a business trip." He said, "Well, what is a vacation?" So I had to explain the difference, at 5 years old. And it's just such a different, thorough learning. And I feel like Sharon, the Rich Dad started it. And then I just really took it to, I'd say, just a different depth. What I did is, because I was part of that Rich Dad Advisor series, genius. And really that's what I built. So I have the same kind of team. We have, all the lawyers, the CPAs, we have that kind of, all in the alternatives. Yeah, they'll support your employee life, but they're going to move you over here very quickly, because you're going to look at your tax returns. If you're all employee and no entities, even if you have rental real estate, well, it better be in an LLC, especially if you're high paid. So that's kind of the big distinction. And Linda, I'm going to leave it there for a minute, just because I hope that inspired a lot of questions. And Robert gave you the context of how serious this is. Actually, before we go I'm going to do one more thing. I printed off. I don't even have the galleys yet, unfortunately. So the book, again, it's Make Your Kids Millionaires. It's around goal setting, risk versus reward, debit card use, credit card use. The first 3 chapters are really the millionaire map, the mindset, the actions. It gives you blueprints. Chapter 4, I'm just reading this off. Birth is age to 5. It's 0 to 5. Then chapter 5 is what do you do 6 to 8? What in chapter 6, what do you do 9 to 11, then 12 to 15, 16 and 17 are pivotal years, and then 18 and beyond. And then what our website right now, if you went to the Make Your Kids Millionaires, it's a sales page, right? Because it's a pre-order page, but it's going to turn into a resource page. So you'll have access to the folks to get LLCs, to get this stuff done. So we'll have all the resources, and it'll have checklists age by age. So there'll be tabs. 0, what do you do? 1, what do you do? 2, what do you do? So I said, I don't care if you're 24 years old, you go back and you fill in the gaps of everything you didn't do that need to get done, that just need to be part of your financial base. So I hope, does that answer your question, Robert? It's very, very thorough on the financial literacy and actions. And then down to, honestly, we have huge opinions on what bank to bank at and how many banks should you use and how banking works. And it's really, really the grit is what I say.
No, you totally, you answered my question. I mean, everything you're talking about is great. I'm a like-minded thinker and trying to get my kids, increase their financial acumen, getting them to pay attention to it. It was the creating generation wealth term that I just wanted to understand where you were coming from on that. Well,
I'm a huge fan that if those kids I have a 94-year-old client, you'll love this story, that the reason he came is the generational wealth term, because it kind of triggered probably a similar reaction. And he's like, and he's worth millions. And he's like, oh my gosh. So he made his kids come get mentored by me. And only the kids that got mentored they're going to be all named in the trust, but what they get and how they access will depend on their financial literacy now. And he said, if there's a whole bunch left over, it's going to charity. So, I mean,
that's the thing, should there, that's a whole philosophical discussion. I think, do you leave the money for your kids, or do you go spend every nickel and, they're on their own, but you've given them, not resources, but you've given them resourcefulness as the gift.
Totally agree. And I mean, my choice, and that's why I also think that's the family financial literacy is that conversation. And it is very philosophical. Some people, I mean, Kyle and I are very different. So I have a co-author who is an Air Force fighter pilot. So his story is very different. 25 years of service, 25 years employed, but he had entities. He knew how to do it. And he taught his kids their whole way up. So this is my story, single mom, 2 kids, Kyle, 25-year employee, and how we both did it. And how they both have tools, but we're very different. Like, I'm a huge fan of the trust in both. I'm going to give them tools, and they're going to get a nice, they're going to get a nice setup. I'll call it that. He's not. They're going to learn it and earn it, or they don't get it.
Yeah.
And he's getting, and his wife at the end are just going to go spend it all. So I think it's what we love about the book is the range. It gives you a huge range. And actually, I don't know what he's going to spend. Actually, I have to ask him that question. What are you going to do? But his kids are great. I love all 4 of our kids, thank God, have turned out magically wonderful. We're like, should we really publish the book? But thank God they're all like walking examples, because it'd be like really embarrassing if the media gets a hold of some kid that's out just hustling, doing some crazy thing. It's like, oh my God, we're going to get blown up by the media.
Right.
The social media, I call the internet like the bathroom wall. Anybody will write anything about you. So it's so ruthless out there. I said, we have to be really careful. Like, but it was an experiment. Like there were a lot of blunders. I mean, I talk more about my blunders because I was just more entrepreneurial. I tried stuff, I lost and tried it again and won. And so it's not everything you're gonna do is right, but doing nothing's wrong. That's how strong. I mean, like to do nothing and just say, I hope y'all figure it out. Like I had to figure it out. So I think for me it was kind of, I'm kind of later in my career, and this is I should say a legacy book for both Kyle and I to hand it over and say, I think we did a better job than we've seen out there in the space to really help guide parents, like 0 to 18. It's sort of that book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. We want it to be that popular. Like, of course, this is what you do. And in the future, we might have to rename parts of it because I think Make Your Kids Millionaires for some, they're like, why do I want them to be millionaires? I said, well, at least be 100,000-aires. At least get them financially smart. I know 100,000-aires. I don't think anybody's ever said that. It's a funny word. But what other questions do you have? I do have a few more slides, but I thought, Linda, I know you'd.
Loral, I trust you so much. If you have additional wisdom that you'd like to share and you'd like to go through another slide or two, we certainly have time for that, but we can also open it up for discussion too if anyone has questions. Robert, I so appreciate your patience in asking your question, and two, also the way you positioned it. Thank you so much. It led to what I think was a really valuable conversation for everyone. So, Loral, any other parting thoughts or any other recommendations?
I do. Sandra asked a great question. So we will have Canadian resources. And, if you follow me on LinkedIn or just, I can privately, or you can have Linda connect with us. I have amazing Canadian resources because of my husband. I mean, from every piece of this. And we use them. I mean, he's set up in Canada with 2 kids. I'm set up in America. He's, green carding and moving to America. It's so interesting how hard it is to get someone from the North when they can walk across our borders in the South. I had to say that because you have no idea. We've been married for 6+ years, and we're still in the battle to get him across the northern border. And a lot of it's because of the way that I'm structured and what we're doing. But it's been an interesting journey learning all that. So we have amazing resources. Like, I'd almost say two very specific people on the team are just, they're world-class guys. And they operate a lot out of the UK and other countries too. So what we're going to do on the side is, if you're from a country, because it is very US centric, Canadian right behind it. But if you're from another country, put it in and then be able to comment to us, because we do have them, but we're not going to give a directory away like that. Like that's liability too, right? We have a huge liability on doing that. So let's do another slide, Steve, because I want to just talk about, I think for the adults, this isn't in the kids book, but for the adults, Steve, are you out there? I'm going to click the slide to sequencing. And it's probably the definitive work I did in the Millionaire Maker. Yeah. And so, there's just too many books. And there's actually, one that even Tony just did. And that to me, and I like his work. I do. But I think there's too many 1 to 10. If you just do these 10 things, it'll all work. It's not going to. You're all so different. So I start and say, well, how do you really start? And so I called it a gap analysis, which is what's your financial baseline and what's your freedom day goal, right? So old school be retirement, like where is your gap? And then from the gap, we can plan. We can plan your income. Like how much do you need to make to hit those goals? And you might not know, but let's just put some targets out there. We can always keep adjusting, but you got to at least say, I want that. I want 10,000 a month. I want 20,000 a month when I'm, done. I want 30,000 a month. If you want to buy a plane, you want a bunch of real estate, you're going to have 100,000. So how is that going to occur? And in what order do you do it? The bottom is just your responsibility. You got to lead. You're going to build teams, and you have to manage your conditioning, right? And all of us have an odd conditioning about money. We do talk a lot in the book about how to talk to your kids and I have the never, ever say, we can't afford it. And don't ever, when a kid walks in a store, say, don't ask for anything. Because their brain is too not developed, and they process that as I'm not worthy and I'm not deserving. Now, those words don't come out of anybody's mouth, but that's how it happens. Right? Or there's not enough and there's never enough. And then there's this desperate energy that gets created. Like I studied with Bob Proctor, 21 years old. He became a very formal mentor to me. And Like the subconscious mind is so powerful. So those are just I call them the stock and block. The 6 in the middle, go ahead and put those up, Steve. This is the definitive difference. Like some of you, like honestly, Cal became a client because of the assets and entities and the tax situation he was in, because he was making so much money, getting taxed so much. He's like, how can we change my entity and trust structure and fix my assets so I'm reduced? Some people, I call it a business. I call it a cash machine. Is they need a cash machine because there's the statistics on small business is too many fails. So I didn't want to say get a small business, just get it, and now the new word would be side hustle. So that's that. We got to make some money. Let's go. So like when I left at the Minute Georgia Southern, I'm like, you all can make money. Like you go back to your hometowns, your heroes, just that you got a football scholarship. Go do camps, do a quarterback camp, do a speed camp, do a strength training camp, do a nutrition camp. You have all summer to make a bunch of money. Go. And then forecasting is my word for budget because I can't stand the word because budget, well, nobody listens to it. Budgets are like diets, they're restrictive and they're limiting and they just have such a negative connotation. So you'll see in a lot of my work, I throw a lot of negative things around money out. I don't use them. Forecasting is a term about how do you spend your money? Let's make it and let's decide purposefully. And in my world, I would say, so Robert, was that a personal expense that you used on a personal credit card or was that a business expense? Or were you in such a hurry, you just used one card and thought you sorted out later? That's called commingling. We're not doing that. So I really am gritty about it. Like I teach down to the behavior of your day and then systems on how do you just make it simple. And use of credit cards does make it simple. It makes it simple for your bookkeeper, your accountant. It cleans it all up. Super easy. Wealth accounts is my word for, I say savings, but there's investments, as I think a lot of you in C-suite would know. They start at $25,000 to $50,000. You have to be accredited. Right. And the new accreditation number went from 200 to 250 this year. So accreditation is a little bit higher. So a wealth account is that money you make in your cash machine where you're putting it away with the intention of, I want to go buy this piece of real estate or I want to go up, invest in iFlip. I have to do a little pitch for Randy and I. Like I want to put my money into an investment, but I don't have enough. So it's an account purposefully intended for only assets. And so in part of your forecasting, I don't like the word savings. Savings is an undefined lump of money. But what do you get when you go to a bank? Checking your savings. So then I cut into the savings. I said, but we're going to save for what? So let's call part of it a wealth account, part of it charity, part of it emergency, part of it, maybe college funding. What is it? So I'm really definitive. So I hope that's defining the difference. I get really into your stuff. I love I love the expense side of most people. That's one of the first things I ever ask for in businesses. Give me your expenses of your company. I want to see how you're like running your tax schedule. And then give me your personal, because I bet there's a million things, probably not a million, up to 81,000 pages of things you're not deducting because you didn't know about them. They're not publicized unless you go to the ICE code. And then debt management. I'm not a huge fan of being debt free. I think you need to have debt in the system, make sure your credit score. I'm a huge fan of high credit scores and being able to really if the system's here, let's use it to its highest capability. So having debt does increase and help manage your credit score. And to not have that to be debt free, just go be debt free for a little bit. Don't even do it. It's like I had debt free clients when they first came to me because I got them out of other, go get solid programs. And the first thing we did is I said, you got to get those credit cards, think about them investment cards instead of, irresponsible credit cards. And that means, pay them off every month, keep your interest low. Purposeful use of debt has a lot of reasons to exist for businesses, for capitalization of businesses, a lot. There's a lot to that a lot of people don't talk about. I also have my big financial literacy every day. I have a huge YouTube channel too, that I'm out every day, 10 to 15 minutes about one of these topics, just talking. One that hit the biggest spike was what's the difference between wealth, generational wealth. It wasn't wealth though. It was it was about basically how do you be your own bank and create your own wealth. That's my highest spike YouTube channel. My number 2, how to use a credit card to increase your wealth. Interesting how those tied. And it's been an interesting journey. So any questions? I love it. And then go to the next slide, Steve, the Make Your Kids Millionaires. There's the book right there. So again, Kyle Beckman. So it is a step-by-step guide to lead the children to financial freedom. So very, very educational. And there's Linda's.